do a YouTube live weather update for what we can expect for the rest of the night over the next couple of days. I'm cutting this a little bit close to our 10 o'clock show, so I'm going to try and make this as brief as I can over the next 20 minutes or so. But we'll get started with this here in, like I said, about 30 seconds to a minute. I got to get a couple things here behind the scenes. But what I will show you is a look at our satellite loop and the atmospheric river that continues to pump moisture into western Montana. We've been seeing this for the last couple of days. It's produced some very heavy rainfall, especially across northwest Montana, and I think it's going to be where the focus is, though we may see more of west central and even parts of southwest Montana get a bit more involved with this storm system over the next, say, 24 to 48 hours. But we'll go through some of those snowfall totals, rainfall totals here in just a moment. I think I've got everything going, working like I need to here behind the scenes. So let's see, that looks good. All right, so just due to time, I know we'll have people work their way in here in just a few minutes and as we go throughout this, but we'll get started with this. Again, thanks for tuning in, spending a little bit of your evening with me, and I'll try and go through some of this relatively briefly. But again, questions or comments, feel free to ask those in the chat section, and we will go from there. So if you're just tuning in, really what we've been talking about the last few days has been this big plume of subtropical moisture that has been putting down some prolific rainfall across the Pacific Northwest and some pretty heavy rainfall totals even into western Montana. I'm going to pull something up here really quick because I knew I forgot to do that. Let me grab a look at this. This is some of our heaviest, or at least highest, or most notable rainfall totals that we've seen over the last 72 hours. The Bear Mountain snow tells 7.5 inches of rain or melted snow, likely a combination of rain and snow in that area. But this is north and west of Heron, right along the Montana-Idaho state line. But 7.5 inches of precipitation over the last 3 days. Look out past 3.7 inches, up at Hungry Horse over 3¼ inches, pretty close to that even at lower elevations. Places like Haugen had 3.22, West Glacier just over 3 inches, and Trout Creek just under 2⅓. But I am going to show you another map that shows, I have it broken down into the highest rainfall precipitation amounts. Oops. Hit that there, and I just noticed you can see that right there, so let me adjust that just a bit. So there's that 7.5 inch total at Bear Mountain, right on the state line. I have it filtered out by essentially anything that is over 1.75 inches. So you look at places like close to the Blacktail ski area, 1.84 inches, and I'll make this a little bit bigger so we can see some of these totals. 1.84 inches there near Blacktail, 3.02. This is going to be pretty close to the, oops, I lost it there. This is north and west of Kalispell. You see a lot of these totals up into the mountains east of Hungry Horse Reservoir, 3.43, 4.41, 3.85 inches, and these are all 72-hour totals. Even there near Whitefish, we're talking 2 inches close to Whitefish Lake, 2.8 on the southeast side there, and at Big Mountain, 2.62 inches of, again, combination of rain and snow there from that bit of cold air that sagged down, brought those snow levels down to about 3,000 feet. But you see those 3-inch totals. This is right on Interstate 90. But the reason I wanted to show these is, you know, we've seen some pretty heavy rainfall rates, no doubt about it. But I want to go a little bit further off to the west and show you some of what has happened back over into the Cascades of Washington. Look at some of these totals. I'm going to zoom in closer here into the Olympic Peninsula. 17.18 inches of rain over the last 72 hours. Here to the north and west of Olympia, we're talking between 10 and 13.5 inches of rain just in this zone. And as we get into the Cascades themselves, we're talking, east of the Seattle-Tacoma area, 13.65, 12.56 as you get into the mountains, 10.2. So some very significant rainfall has been going on. I think that's probably an incorrect total. I saw 35.46. I think that's an incorrect rainfall amount, but still gives you the sense. Just you see all of these reds and dark reds showing up across the Cascades, anywhere from 5 to 15 inches of rain all across the higher elevations in those areas. And even as you look down into the areas closer to the Puget Sound, Seattle, Tacoma, you're talking about 1 to 2 inches on the south side of that area. You notice an emptying spot right here. This is a little bit of a cool fact, and we deal with some of this over in our region. That is the rain shadow of the Olympic Mountains there on the Olympic Peninsula. So it really cut down on the amount of rain for places like Everett, back over into parts of Whidbey Island, and then across the Seattle metro. But once you got south of that rain shadow, those rainfall rates really started to go off. So a lot of that moisture got squeezed off, but you still see we've had plenty of moisture across western Montana. So like I said, just wanted to give a little bit of a look at that before I jumped, fully into our forecast. But that's the kind of moisture that we have been dealing with. We've been getting heavy rainfall rates. We've been kind of getting I'll almost say the dregs of all of that moisture getting squeezed out from the Olympics, squeezed out over the Cascades, and then finally getting into northern Idaho, western Montana, where we've still been picking up anywhere from 1 to as much as, again, 7.5 inches up in the higher elevations. But still, places like Trout Creek that we were talking about, 2.7 inches. Across parts of the Flathead and Mission Valley, we saw over an inch, and we could continue to see more of that over the next about 48 to 72 hours. So temperatures have been climbing in northwest Montana through the evening. We've gone from about 36 degrees at 6 o'clock. Now we're 48 degrees as that warm air continues to pump into the region. 54 Missoula, 51 in Butte, 56 in Bozeman. It's one of those, if I didn't tell you it was 9:30 on December 10th, you'd probably think I was crazy right now talking about these kinds of temperatures. So I believe, and looking at Bozeman, as I'm like trying to look around the camera, 56 degrees right now. If I am correct, the record high at the airport there in Bozeman was 55 degrees today. We were at 61 earlier on today. So even again at 9:30, granted that's still not official, but potentially an unofficial record high was broken in Bozeman. And likely we're going to be looking at record warm lows for many areas tonight. We're going to see those temperatures falling into the 40s, but we may even be talking upper 40s, even a few low 50s, just with how moist the atmosphere is. It's not going to be cooling down anytime, tonight, other than just a little bit here and there. What has been a big issue, though, have been those winds. Those are the sustained winds, anywhere from about 5 to 15 miles per hour, but we've been seeing gusts far stronger than that. 24 recently in Missoula, 32 in Butte, 30 in Dillon, Livingston and Big Timber, 59 and 54 miles per hour. I know earlier on in the evening we had gusts closer to 70, if not a little bit over 70 miles per hour. There in Livingston, we've had gusts close to 40 miles per hour here in Missoula, and that may have been the cause, I don't know for certain on this, but that may have been what led to some of those power outages that we saw on the east side of Missoula, as well as over at the University of Montana campus. So we could continue to see at least that potential for some spotty power outages tonight, especially into northwest Montana, where we get more of that wind to finally mix down into the valleys. Wind advisories for the Kootenai Cabinet region, Flathead and Mission Valleys, Missoula and Bitterroot Valleys, Potomac City Lake region, West Glacier region. For the potential of 30 to 40 mile per hour winds in the valleys, we could see gusts closer to 60 miles per hour once you get a few thousand feet off those valley floors. So as you go just a little bit higher in elevation, mid and upper levels, or mid and upper elevations, you could see those gusts up towards to 60 miles per hour. Same story down to the Madison River Valley, 60 to 65 mile per hour winds can't be ruled out. And same story back over towards Livingston. One note on those winds as we go throughout the night, they could be a bit on the erratic side. So we're going to be looking in general, say 20 to 30, 30 to 40 type gusts. but you may get into these lulls where you have winds less than 10 miles per hour for a short time, and then all of a sudden they come ripping back in to the area. And this is going to be continuing through about 11 a.m. tomorrow. That's when a lot of those wind advisories will be allowed to expire, and winds should slowly start to subside outside of areas along and south of Interstate 90 as we see that next push of moisture start to roll in. But overall, once we get past tomorrow morning, winds should start to taper off, but that potential for some power outages is going to remain in place. What's also going to be remaining in place through tomorrow afternoon, the flood watches that are in effect for all of northwest Montana, as well as into parts of Idaho. I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I think that might be Clearwater County. I believe it is Clearwater County over there. But could be talking moderate to heavy rainfall continuing on. And as we go into radar, you can see really this push of moisture. We are getting a little bit of a rain shadow effect going on in the Flathead Valley. So maybe a little bit limited on the amount of moisture, at least for now, but I think that will start to come right back into play later on tonight. So this is just going to continue to add to those precipitation totals, primarily rain, up and along the Divide, Glacier National Park, only the highest peaks getting the snowfall with those snow levels at about 6,000 to 7,000 feet, and then more of that snow into the mountains of Idaho. And like I was mentioning, that Bear Mountain Snowtell site north and west of Heron is sitting roughly in here. So continuing to still get snow or get heavy rainfall right on top of that Snowtell site. So that number is likely only going to continue to build in size. Showers back over towards Noxon, Heron, the Trout Creek area. But for the most part, right at the moment, it does look like the heaviest rainfall is staying in the higher elevations. Though I don't know for certain. Kalispell, we may be, like I said, we may be seeing that rain shadow. We could see that start to turn back over here relatively soon. But if it doesn't, then that may limit the amount of rainfall we see as compared to what this forecast model shows. But in general, northwest Montana is going to be the focus of this. We're going to continue to see moderate to heavy rainfall for our valleys, for our mid-elevation slopes. This is what's helping to lead to the high to very high avalanche danger in the mountains across this area as well. And because of the rain, we're seeing larger avalanches, or at least the potential thereof, of those that may bring those further down into lower elevation areas in the backcountry. So if you have plans in the backcountry, be aware of that, as we could see those coming down off those higher peaks. We'll likely see another push of moisture later on tonight. You notice how the overall coverage and intensity of this moisture in northwest Montana starts to increase as we begin to see this sag a little bit further southward. So we've been in this northwesterly flow with that atmospheric river. It is going to trend a little bit further south through the morning. So Kalispell, we may start to quiet things down, at least for the short term, other than a few spotty showers as we go into the later morning. But then Missoula, we start to see more of that moisture moving into the region. And that's going to bring, at least right now, if this model comes to fruition, some of that moderate to heavy rain for the Interstate 90 corridor as early as about, say, 7 to 8 o'clock, more likely as we get closer to 11. And if this model comes to fruition, that flow of the atmospheric river really just stalls out pretty close to Interstate 90. See how this just continues to push rain right over places like Alberton, Superior, Missoula, Clinton, Seeley Lake over towards Helena, and even some of that moisture starts working its way down towards Bozeman. This is where we could see some heavier rainfall totals start to pile up, even down into the Bitterroot Valley as well, just depending on where that flow tends to set up. Bozeman by tomorrow evening, models are indicating a more of an enhancement towards Bozeman, as well as into the Bridgers and the areas further off to the east, the Crazy Mountains, Beartooth and Absaroka Mountains as well. And this really just does not move. Notice how that flow starts to slowly lift back up to the north. We get another big push of moisture into early Friday morning, and along the Divide, maybe even into the Seeley-Swan Valley, up towards Helena, we start to get a bit more cold air that filters in. We could be talking about some freezing rain, some accumulating snow up towards Essex, as well as into the Marias Pass area, maybe some of that snowfall into the Seeley-Swan Valley, areas east from there and into the Bob Marshall Wilderness. I think most of western Montana will stay on the warm side of this. So we'll stay primarily as rain showers into Friday morning. Missoula, Hamilton, Butte, Bozeman, and even Kalispell. And that continues. That flow really just starts to sit right in that zone. Heavy snowfall possible for north and central Montana, all the way down into southeastern portions of the state. As we get into Friday night, that cold air may start to move back into northwest Montana, and with this residual moisture that's still in place, can't rule out a quick changeover back over to some snow up across northwest Montana, but those showers still continuing kind of waffling back and forth from south to north, back to the south across northwest and west central Montana before things really start to quiet down as we head into Saturday morning. Some spotty showers still lingering on right back into the Interstate 90 corridor, Missoula, Butte, back down towards Bozeman, and then up I-15 to Helena. But by the time we get into Saturday afternoon, the storm system is finally clearing. The atmospheric river is pretty much done at this point, and we may even start to see some clearing, finally maybe a little bit of sunshine as we get into Saturday and Sunday, though a few showers can't be ruled out. Now, as for the additional rainfall that we could see, this is going through Saturday morning. Places like Kalispell, Bozeman, it really just comes down to how this moisture moves through the area. Do we deal with the rain shadow effect? Do we get a lot of that downslope flow? I think in general, for places like Kalispell, Missoula, maybe even Bozeman, 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch will be common, though some isolated totals of 1/4 to maybe 3/4 of an inch can't be ruled out. And as we were seeing on the forecast models, if this plume of moisture just sets right on here and sits over places like Missoula, Superior, down towards Hamilton, we could see 1/2 inch to an inch. Not fully convinced that that happens, but it is a possibility with the kind of rainfall rates that we have already seen up across northwest Montana. So it just kind of comes down to those very small little nuances of how much moisture comes through, how much downslope flow do we see in our valleys, to really see how this all plays out. So in general, tonight, Thursday, Friday, and even into Saturday morning, be prepared for wet weather. Just simple as that. Totals could be on the high side. We still have that potential for some flooding issues, some ponding on the roads, rock slides, mudslides. That's still going to be a concern, maybe even after we get past the flood watches into tomorrow, something we'll be watching out for. Like I mentioned, there is going to be the snowy side of things. This is primarily going to be right along the divide, maybe into the Mission and Swan Mountains. But you see the potential for maybe 4 to 8 inches for Rogers Pass, 6 to as much as 16 inches up over Marias Pass. Just depends on if we are all snow at Marias Pass or do we get that mix of snow and freezing rain, which would limit the amount of snowfall that we do see there, but could create even worse travel conditions. So you can see that just big plume of moisture, a lot of those purples across north, central, and eastern and southeastern Montana. Looks like, again, most of our region is going to miss out on that kind of moisture. We're going to be on the warm side of the system. That's going to bring us primarily rain. But if you have any travel plans, again, over Marias, Rogers Pass, over into places like Great Falls, Helena, Lewistown, be prepared for some rough travel conditions as we go over the next 72 hours or so. Continuing on, again, this is why we have winter weather advisories that do include the Big Belt, Bridger, and Castle Mountains up towards Bridger Canyon areas of North Gallatin County, Eastern Broadwater County, and then going into parts of, I believe that's Marr County, and then Lewis and Clark County there for Helena. And then right along the Southern Rocky Mountain front, the East Glacier Park region, we have those winter storm watches. This is again going to primarily be for places like Rogers Pass and Marias Pass, where we could see some of those heavier snowfall totals. Now getting into the precipitation side as a whole, Thursday, Friday, and then the very first part of Saturday into the morning hours, we're going to see some high precipitation chances, but they really start to fall off as we head into Saturday and Sunday. And for the most part, it does look like this weekend is going to be a relatively quiet one. As for tonight, again, those low temperatures have pretty much already happened in Kalispell. We're already back up to 46, but we were down to, say, 36 earlier on. 42 Missoula, 39 Butte, 45 over into Bozeman, primarily northwest, west central Montana. We'll see the moisture, the rainfall overnight tonight. And for tomorrow, more of the area gets involved with this, but this is especially going to be true for Missoula. It does look like west central Montana could see the wettest conditions once we get beyond the morning hours. Temperatures in the 40s for most of the region, though 53 down in Bozeman, and that really kind of is the trend over the next 5 to 7 days. Temperatures anywhere from 10 to nearly 20 degrees above average. Bozeman, we're likely going to be in the low 50s the next few days. So temperatures maybe even closer to 25 degrees above average. So that's kind of where we are with all of this. This was the last graphic that I had. We've seen some very heavy rainfall. We're going to see some more, especially in a few localized areas in northwest and west central Montana. Again, if you have any questions or comments, sort of the last call for this, feel free to ask those. We've got the wind gusts that are out there. Could still see those 30 to 40 miles per hour in our valleys. Madison River Valley, as well as the higher elevations, are the exception, where we could see some gusts, say 55 to as much as 65 miles per hour. We've already seen some power outages. That potential is going to be sticking around for tonight. Things start to calm down as we get into tomorrow morning, and especially into the afternoon. Again, that atmospheric river continues to fluctuate north and south. That's going to continue to be the case for the next few days. Heavy rainfall for northwest Montana tonight, sagging into west central Montana as we head into the next 2 days, really. And it does look like, based on that last forecast model I was looking at, the Interstate 90 corridor will really be the focus of that moisture for about 24 hours before it begins to lift back north. And as that does so, especially over places like Rogers-Marias Pass, we have that collision of warm, moist Pacific air and some colder Arctic air. It's going to bring that potential for some moderate to heavy snowfall from Marias Pass, Rogers Pass, and then areas east from there. So Helena, up towards Great Falls, Lewistown, Billings, Miles City. Could be talking about moderate to heavy snowfall travel impacts as we head into this weekend. But if we can get past Saturday morning, we finally start to break this atmospheric river up. Conditions start to quiet down, at least for a couple of days. And we could even see a few breaks in the clouds and a little bit of sunshine trying to work its way in, at least for the short term. It does look like active weather is going to be returning as we head into the early and middle parts of next week, especially for northwest and west central Montana again. So some much needed moisture continues to fall over the area. We do need a little bit of a break, I think, just to get, like I said, just a little bit of sunshine into the area, break out of this just monotonous pattern of rain, snow mixed in a little bit, back to rain. But we are going to likely see that again as we head into the early and middle parts of next week. So thanks for spending a little bit of your evening with me, about 25 minutes here. So tune into our live broadcast coming up here in about 15 minutes. We'll have the latest news and weather updates. And then, of course, tomorrow morning, NBC Montana Today with Chief Meteorologist Brooke Foster and Jason Hurst. And as always, if you have any photos or videos of the weather that's going on outside that you'd like to share, certainly feel free to do so at NBCMontana.com/chime-in. So thanks for tuning in, and hope you have a great rest of your evening, and I'll see you all on the next one. With NBC Montana, I'm meteorologist Mitchell Combs.